Welcome back to the Lanterne Rouge Cycling Podcast presented by Zwift. This is stage 19, the first slightly more straightforward sprint stage that should have been a sprint that we've had for a while. 189 Ks from Castelnau, Magnoc to Cahors. It has some rolling hills, most importantly, in the middle of the stage for about 30 kilometers rather. Then a couple of rollers, we're talking like 1,700 meters, 6%, 1,400 meters, 6%. Then the finish, uphill drag. Harder than it looks. And there's rolling hills before there. It's just, with everyone on their last legs, it's a difficult stage to control. We knew the sprinters teams, Alpecin, Lotto, Bike Exchange, would be desperate to do so because there's been a dearth of sprint opportunities in this year's Tour de France, but the Tour de France men's race may finish on Sunday with the last proper stage GC-wise tomorrow, but the Tour de France Femmes avec Zwift kicks off on Sunday. Benji and I'm going to starting my journey tomorrow morning. But yeah, that race is back-to-back with the men's race, and Zwift are calling on all cycling fans to watch the farm. Make sure you tune into our recap. Subscribe down below if you're watching on YouTube, or if you're listening on podcast players, make sure you follow the podcast so that you tune into all the Tour de France Femme avec Zwift recaps from the 24th to the 31st of July. Make sure you check out the preview if you want to get up to date on that race and the main participants and all the jerseys, etc. But were you surprised, Benji, to see A, quick step in the break, and B, Lotto pacing and not having, say, a Vermeersch or a Gilbert get in the break?
Personally, I think when you have Caleb Ewan, for example, as your sprinter, I think it will be hard to say on a stage like this, okay, we're not going to go for him at all. I think that's something that, when it comes to the team dynamics in the team, would probably not go too well towards Caleb Ewan, who was still their star sprinter on paper for the coming year and so forth. So that's the aspect I see there that I don't know if he would have been happy. But on the other hand, if they have a rider in the breakaway, they don't have that pressure in the peloton to have to ride. But perhaps that break makes it then. Nonetheless, the riders in the breakaway, like you mentioned, included Quickstep, Honoré in there for Quickstep. I think Brian Holmes said before the start to Honoré or about Honoré that they told Honoré, if you are not in the breakaway, you're the first rider in our train today. And I guess that's why he decided to go in the breakaway. So he was there together with Taco van der Hoorn for Intermarché, of course. He was in a skin suit, so he was looking for that extra advantage there. We had Niels Pollitt, German champion for Bora, previous stage winner last year. Mohoric, 2 stage wins last year as well, also in the group. And then Quinn Simmons for Trek Segafredo, whose sprinter Mes Pedersen has been reported sick overnight. And I think Trek reported that like just when Simmons got into the breakaway. So perhaps to make sure that people didn't expect him going in the breakaway. I don't know what the feeling was there. But hey, 5 riders in the breakaway, and on paper, a strong breakaway, right? This is the kind of breakaway where you're like, ooh, you need multiple teams to control this.
We saw DSM for Dainese, God bless them. Total for Sagan, God bless them. Alpecin and Phoenix for Philipsen, makes perfect sense. Lotto for Caleb Ewan, and Bike Exchange for Groeneweg, and controlling all 5 teams. And Jakobsen, I also think, gave Honore the green light because he's like, my legs are stuffed. And he basically, that meant Quickstep didn't have to pay. So I think Quickstep, it made sense to me. I'd like to see it go back in time to know, like, if Vermeersch gets in that break and he's got good legs, which maybe he doesn't, maybe he wouldn't win anyway, does that have a higher chance of winning than Caleb Ewan from the bunch? I don't know. I guess that's why you pay the big bucks to Ewan.
When it comes to the peloton, we see that all these teams are pacing now, knowing that Wout van Aert has podiumed so many sprints already and so forth. Do you think that it's some kind of cheat code for Jumbo that they've got GC as the main focus for their team, and therefore teams don't expect them to pace in stages like this?
Well, like, there's no bluff to call. They're just not going to pace with. They're not going to put Van Hooydonk on the front. They've won yesterday's stage. They're just not going to do it. So, like, or did they win? Did they win stage 17? No, Pog won it. So they're just not going to do it. Anyway, keep the brake super tight. You might be wondering why they're keeping the brake at a minute. Why are they bringing the brake back to 30 seconds? It's because you've got Guillaume Van Kersbroek pacing. Alpecin are down to 6 riders. They have no Goggle, no Van der Poel. These hills in the middle of the stage, they don't look like much. They're not categorized, but they're really difficult for a Dillier, for a Van Kersbroek against someone like Morich or Taco van der Hoorn or Quinn Simmons. And you really want to be honest, I thought it was good they brought the break back early. I thought that break was
Yeah,
too dangerous,
yeah.
frankly. And if you're trying to bring that break back in the last 30 kilometers, 40 kilometers, those hills we saw with the Simmons court break in the Vuelta last year, you're not going to do it, particularly with teams with rouleurs on their last leg. So I thought bring that break back was fine. And then, like, crosswinds were reported for the stage. I couldn't really see billowing crosswinds in the fields, but the break gets brought back eventually. Simmons, the last guy, he attacked for combativity, I think. Morich led him. He gets brought back. There's some counters, but there's splits. I still don't know what the reason for the splits were, Benji, because they weren't fanned out left to right in full echelon formation, but there's 3 groups all of a sudden.
Yes, suddenly certain groups started creating, and I felt like certain places in the stage had some kind of like, I visually saw that groups were kind of struggling with wind, but nothing too crazy to the point where I also didn't know whether it was actually echelons that created the split. I feel like it probably just snapped between 2 people and wasn't closed directly, and that's how those gaps started opening. And that's technically also how echelons happen. So that's basically the vaguest description I could give about 2 groups coming out of 1 group. Anyway, Jakobsen was behind, for example, for a bit in the group behind, but eventually those groups started folding together again. So I don't think those echelons really had a massive effect on today's stage, really. But there was also a puncture by Pogacar later, and then we saw like footage of his team supposedly bringing him back, but then he was basically bringing his team back at a certain point. But it's logical, because when you're not between the convoy, when you don't have draft behind cars, then it's logical that he's behind his teammates to bring him back to the front. When you've got cars, the ideal position to sit at is right behind the cars, so his teammates will be behind him then. So that's ideal, but I feel like it was more accidental than on purpose that they were riding like that behind the peloton again. Anyway, Pogacar came back to the peloton, was back into position, and we came into I think 30k to go, where we had a decent hill. You said it before, the break was caught, but some attacks started flowing again, right?
Yeah, we had Fred Wright, Jasper Sturven going up the road with, sorry, who was the
Bujar.
BM? Gujar. He's actually been quite active. He was the guy who went with Benjamin Thomas on the stage Jasper Philipsen won, I think stage 15, the cursed one for Jumbo Visma. He's been quite good so far out of the BNB riders. And again, they're like Sturven and Wright, big engines. They get over these sort of hills really, really well. Pogacar also attacks, trying to like he comes back from the mechanical attacks. And to be honest, it's like, yeah, there's a bit of panic from maybe Jonas. I feel like if I'm Vingegaard, I'm not reacting myself. There's absolutely no way I'm leaving the wheel of Van Hooijdonk or someone else or Tej Benoot. I'm like, this move has almost no prospect of success. I'll just let Pogacar cook out there. But they close it anyway. Pogacar's still trying. Jonas Vingegaard said yesterday, I wouldn't be surprised if he tries me again. And we see the sprinters teams, no Lotto, no bike exchange, struggling to control. It's actually just Total and Alpecin, I think, with 2 riders each. And they're all really tired. They're
Mhm.
also not probably maybe of the quality of Fred Wright and Sturven and Goujard. And they're just really struggling to control the break. And because they don't bring it back like until maybe no, sorry, they don't bring it back. It's 1,600 meters to go. The gap is like 5 seconds, and you think, oh, that's nothing. Sprint lead out trains, whatever. This is not stage 2 or stage 3. There aren't teams with 5 guys lined out ready to do a huge lead out for their sprinter. Everyone's cooked. They've just done the Pyrenees. Everyone's been chasing all day on a really fast stage. And you've got Van Rensburg at the front. Sagan's pretty much there himself with no more lead out because they've all been spent chasing. And Christophe Laporte attacks across to the breakaway very quickly. And at that point, Sturven and Wright, I was like, he should go right past them, but he didn't.
Yeah, exactly. He stayed on the wheel of Stuyven, and into the last 500 meters, it was actually Fred Wright, or I think it might have been even further than 500 meters to go, that Wright actually started creating separation with Goujar and Stuyven because Goujar could not hold the wheel with Fred Wright. So Fred Wright gained an advantage there, Stuyven in the wheel of Goujar, and Laporte was already in the wheel of Stuyven there. So those three riders chasing Wright at that moment. A bit of a gap is created because of that Laporte move behind Laporte because they didn't jump to his wheel. Philipsen didn't want to go yet. The sprinters were like, okay, if I close that now, I'm basically giving a lead out to all the sprinters behind me, for example. So I think it was just a battle of who's gonna get the bait first, who's going to jump to Laporte's wheel first, and no one did it imminently. And like you said, Laporte was sitting on that wheel of Stuyven, and Stuyven was like getting desperate. It was kind of like Søren Kragh Andersen in Milano Sanremo when he was
Similar.
started getting, yeah, very similar. He started riding just to catch Wright, Stuyven in this situation, and he was basically giving a lead out for Laporte, right?
He must have known Laporte was there at that point. Like he must have known that he's towing Laporte, and Laporte's fresh compared to these guys. He's been sitting in the bunch, and he does. He tows Laporte back to right. They get to right. Laporte just attacks round him. He's not doing a sprint or anything, but we see behind there's no lead out men left. There's no Jonas Rickard. There's nobody, and Laporte is able to sneak away with this last kilometer attack or 700-meter attack up this little rise. I think the rise also, the kicker, made a big difference for the lead
Yeah,
outs and the timing of it. And he wins a second ahead of what must be an extremely frustrated Jasper Philipsen and Alpecin de Koenig. He won the sprint for second, but they just they caught the break, but they didn't because it allowed Laporte to bridge to him. Dainese third, Seneschal fourth, Pogacar fifth, fully went for the sprint. Capio sixth, Groenewegen seventh, Hofstede eighth, Mezgets ninth. I would have liked Arkea actually to commit to Hofstede today. I
okay.
think it's a bit disappointing they didn't actually. This guy came third in Kerner, Russell Kerner behind Ewan and Jacobsen. He gets over this sort of terrain fine, and let's be frank, like Nairo's GC position is what it is. I think that was a bit of a shame.
Yeah.
Mez gets ninth, Ewan 10th. Vingegaard actually loses 5 seconds because of the split, and he made it to the 3K banner final. I knew they would go for Laporte, Benji, when we saw Wout van Aert with his nose in the wind at 8Ks to go. Um,
Yeah.
and so it's good to see, like, it just goes to show what a strong rider Laporte is. He barely gets any chances and he wins.
Exactly, and I can imagine that it was a different experience for people that didn't watch in Belgium, didn't have Belgian comms on, but for 3 kilometers straight, the commentators were, oh, shocked that Wout van Aert was pacing at the front of the peloton, and they didn't understand because the stage was so perfect for Wout van Aert. But I actually thought that they were perhaps bottling it for a second when Wout van Aert was at the front, but not closing those 10 seconds that they had with about 2.5, 3 kilometers to go. I was afraid that they might not catch them if that kept going like that. But then Wout went off the front, and no, not Brent van Moer, it was two riders from Lotto took over in the last 3 kilometers and started hammering it then, which was the savior for the peloton as well. So Lotto kind of made it a sprint in the end, I dare to say, or at least Lotto made sure that Laporte could win this stage because otherwise, I see Fred Wright winning this.
Yeah, I think Wright would have won. As I said, it's a bit of a shame. Maybe Vermeersch didn't get a chance, but it is what it is. And yeah, Jumbo Visma have their third different rider win a Tour de France stage this year, their fifth stage win, and we still have the TT tomorrow, where I think Wow should be the favourite, with Ghana looking not very good. But you know, it's a TT, it's different. And then they also have a decent chance on Champs Elysees on Sunday. But Laporte could have won the TT, could have, would have, should have, of course. But the opening TT, I think he stays up. He beats Lampard because of the weather change. He was ahead of Lampard at T1, and I think when he crashed, he was looking very good for the stage win. So, I mean, I don't know what his contract is, but he would have won Kerner Russell Kerner if he'd stayed on Taco van der Hoorn's wheel later and didn't attack him. He kind of attacked too early. He did the opposite today, but he could this year, Benji, without too much changing, have like two tour wins, Kerner Russell Kern, Day in the yellow jersey. He's a quality rider, and yeah, I mean, imagine the TT Benjamin Thomas could do if you take him from Cofidis to Jumbo Visma. It just goes to show.
Yeah, or Max Walscheid on the cobbles and so forth, that would also be an improvement in some sense, quite certainly. Like, that's the kind of rider that I expected to replace Tony Martin perhaps last year, but that didn't end up happening. Walscheid went to Cofidis, and I was low-key disappointed by that transfer personally. Nonetheless, like, when it comes to Laporte, I think a lot of people forget that this was a guy that came like third or fourth over the Paterberg last year in Tour of Flanders at Cofidis, but nobody looked at him because he was riding in Cofidis' jersey. They weren't like Asgreen was winning the race at that point, so people looked over him, and I think that it proves again that it's such a goddamn good transfer for Jumbo Visma together with Benoit. Those two riders, I've said it before, those are the two transfers where I'm like, these really lived up to way more than their expectations this year, and that's crazy. And it's all also like, yeah, you can have the plan, okay, Laporte for the stage, stuff like that. It's all fine to do so. I'm actually guessing that perhaps they did so to make sure Wout van Aert didn't have to go all out on this stage, so that he could have a bit more of a relaxed stage before the time trial. That's my theory, at least. My extra theory, next to doing it for Laporte. But
I thought
Laporte,
Laporte was going to get in the break. I thought
okay,
there was going to be a bigger break like last year and he'd get in there. That's the perfect guy to slip in and he might
yeah,
win that way. I never thought, well, that's not true. I thought he could contest the sprint. I thought Philipsen would win the sprint. He's quicker than everyone else, but
yeah.
you got to, yeah, you snooze, you lose. And no Jonas can't really hurt. Yeah, anything else from this stage, Benji?
I think
Yeah,
I,
sorry?
yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
Well, Pogacar's 5 second gain. Does that change anything for you?
Not really. It's now 5:26, I think, in GC. So
3:21.
3:26, 2021. Wow, I'm the heat is getting to me, even though it's not that hot anymore. But 5:26, Jesus Christ,
Pogacar
3:21.
hater.
I'm not a. I picked him for this Tour de
Yeah,
France.
Pogacar Stan. Yeah. Um, yeah, that's
No,
it from this stage. It's just a transition stage. It was a bit messy. It was probably harder than the riders hoped for, but in the end, the sprinters teams got mugged. Jumbo Visma win again.
Jesus.
Otherwise, before we do the stage preview tomorrow, there was some Velo news articles about Geraint Thomas. I haven't read the article. I just read the headline, which is 2022 reporting. It's me, saying the team didn't think I could do this. I would say Geraint Thomas is at, and this will segue into the TT. I think he's at a better level than in 2018. And it's funny because, yeah, on the website we published that graph. We were like, Geraint Thomas at Tour de Suisse is on a better trajectory, or at least the same trajectory as 2018. And then he went on what's occurring and was like, graphs don't mean it. Like, come on, seriously, there's all these other factors. And it's like, but it was true. you were you were at the tour, like in your best ever shape. So hopefully yeah, I mean, great performance from him. And for this TT tomorrow, Benji, 41 Ks from La Capelle, Mataval to Rocamadour. It's got, we've already spoken about it before, 10.5 meters of climbing per kilometer, which is 2.5 times less than the Planche de Belfi TT. It's very similar to the Stage 5 one last year, just a bit longer. It's going to be, I don't know, I haven't calculated, a 45 to 48 minute TT or a 50-minute TT. There's 3 intermediate time checks. The rolling hills at the end are 1,600 meters, 4.7%. That's big ring in the extensions. Descent, no valley, then 1,800 meters, 6.2% to the line. Who have you got?
I think that the likely candidate to win is Wout van Aert, but I'm gonna go. I'm gonna go with Tadej Pogacar. He's got nothing to lose. Like, he's gonna go all out for another stage win. He's gonna try, and he's gonna be on the podium at least. So I think Pogacar is gonna win.
What was the Paris TT, the Montluçon one? That had a little kicker at the end that was nasty. Wout van Aert won that by 2 seconds ahead of Roglic. I'm going with Geraint Thomas for the win. I think
Okay,
he's got the earpiece out tomorrow. And I think he's got to go for the stage win. Has to, full gas.
really?
Yeah.
Secure podium? What if he crashes and crashes out his podium?
I mean, you can't you can't ride like that. He's got three
That's true.
minutes five on Guru, so he's got 5 minutes really. He can go to the hospital, come back, get the cast put on, and still beat Guru for third. So you can't. That's what he did on stage one. He said it was fucking with his head, and he took the
Yeah.
earpiece out, went for it. It was all gravy. I think he's got to go full beans for it, and I think he can win. I think he's in crazy shape. I think it's a TT that suits him, and he'll smash those hills at the end in the extensions. I think. Is this similar to the one Alaphilippe beat him on in 2019? That was hilly, right?
I'm not sure it's similar, but I don't know. I think it was much shorter. Was it not like 25K?
Probably, yeah. Alaphilippe wouldn't have been able to win a long TT. He probably doesn't use the TT bike enough. Okay, so I got Thomas. You've got Teddy Pikachu, and
Daddy Pikachu?
it's what the YouTube captions autos. When I say Teddy Pikachu, they always either put Teddy Focaccia bread or Teddy Pikachu. I don't
Daddy
know what they put.
Pikachu's gonna win tomorrow.
Okay, Ganna, I don't think he's on the podium.
I agree.
Yep.
He's
How much time does Pogacar take on Vingegaard?
3 minutes and 20 seconds.
Actually,
Shit. Do you have bonus seconds on time trial?
no.
No, right? Well, does it then lead up to the intermediate sprint for three? Is there a bonus seconds at the intermediate sprint at the tour? No, not even. So,
No.
nah,
This ain't a Giro. This ain't a Mickey Mouse event.
I was looking to make it decisive on
Holden
Champs,
kilometer
okay?
on the Champs Elysees. Laporte
Would be
puts
pretty
Pogacar
funny.
into barriers.
Oh,
I think Pogacar takes 35 seconds.
I think he's gonna take 1 minute and 12 seconds.
That's so much. Absolutely no
I know,
chance. Unless
but Vingegaard
Jonas
can
won't take it easy.
relatively.
He
you should
won't.
say safety, please.
He won't. I bet you he won't.
I don't want him to crash out either. Like on the
I
final
don't want him to.
time
I'm just
trial.
saying. He's going to go
Yeah.
full gas.
Yeah. Likely.
Okay. We'll see.
See you tomorrow.
Thanks to Zwift as always. I'm glad we had a nice and easy stage, and we'll see you at the recap tomorrow. Ciao.